Good morning to you. I hope you're having a good morning. I hope all my Okie friends stayed safe in the storms last night. I don't know if there were storms anywhere else, but I watched ours. So we were good here. It got a little windy and a little tiny bit of rain, but it wasn't anything bad here, so that was a good thing. And I hope you could tell that same story, right? That it's all good. That's what I hope. So I hope your property's okay, your family's okay, your friends, loved ones, even your enemies. I hope they're okay too. So we do have a refuge, don't we? You know, the storms come in life too, and we have a refuge. You know, I tucked everything in. I even went upstairs and told my neighbors, "Hey, if it gets bad, come on down. Don't stay up here. You know, if there's a tornado or something, please come down." You know, and the whole thing was keeping everybody safe, making sure everybody that even those around me, I don't even know the people upstairs. I know her name, and that's about it. But I still had that concern. How much more of a concern does God have for our souls as He watches over our soul? He keeps our soul. He protects us from things. But that doesn't mean bad things don't happen, right? God's protecting our soul. Nothing can get to our soul. That spirit part of us, that part of us that makes up our mind, our will, and our emotions, that part of us is that when this body dies, that lives on, right? That inside part of us, that's the part He keeps. That's the important part. You know, I mean, He can keep my body. That'd be great. But I don't really have any aspiration to live to 969 years old like Methuselah, right? Uh, so when this body does go away, that part of us that makes us us, a distinct individual, person that He loves, a person He created, He protects that. Nothing can get to it. But we still got storms to go through, right? And that's what I was reading about this morning. I was actually reading in James, and he says this. He says, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials." Okay, wait. He said, count it joy. Be joyful when you are facing trials, tribulations, struggles, hard things in life. And then he gives us the reason. He says, knowing. Here's why you can take joy in it, because you know that it's testing your faith. When your faith is tested, it produces patience. And I'm like, okay, I didn't pray for patience. I know better. I'm not going to pray for patience, so why do I have to go through the trials if I don't care? No, but that trying of our faith brings patience, and it'll have its perfect work so that we'll be complete. And so it works stuff out of us. Various trials works things out of us, right? And so then when I was reading that this morning, I skipped over to First Peter 1, where he says, "In this you greatly rejoice, even though you are grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, which is more precious than gold, though that perishes through, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Christ." And so Peter's saying, you know, the trying of your faith is precious. It's precious. And I'm like, I'm thinking it kind of like hurts, right? It hurts my feelings. And I'm like, why does my faith need to be tried? Why is God putting my faith through the fire to make it perfect, to make it pure? That's what gold goes into the fire, to make it pure, to remove the impurities. And it's not for His sake. It's not so that He can go, okay, I got it. Oh yeah, you got faith. Or He goes, oh man, we got to start over because you ain't got no faith. It's not for His benefit. It's for my benefit. It's so that I can look at it and go, man, how much am I trusting God? Can I count it joy? Because these trials are working in me His purposes, right? These trials, the trying of my faith is for my benefit. You know, God told Abraham, He said, you're going to have a son. It was about 14, if I have my numbers right, it was another 14 years before Sarah ever became pregnant. During that 14 years, his faith was tried. Did God really say what He said? Do I really believe what God said? Was He really serious? You know, did he battle back and forth? You know, the trying of our faith is a good time to get all of our spiritual ducks in a row, right? And that's kind of a silly analogy, you know, but when we use that analogy of getting all my ducks in a row, and let's just say I have 8 ducks, okay? And we're going to use the number 8 because number 8 is kind of symbolic if you look at numerology and some of the number significance of numbers. So I say it that way. You know, 8, it means new beginning. So that's why I have 8 ducks in my row, because I need a new beginning today, right? Anyway, and I get them, and then I start counting, and I'm going, I've 6, I've only got 7. Where'd that other duck go? And you got to find that other duck. It's not easy to keep all of our ducks in a row. It's not easy to keep our thoughts all gathered. Abraham had to have battled with his thoughts during that time. Same thing with Joseph. God gave Joseph that dream when he was a young man, a very young man, maybe even a teenager, and 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 he knew that everybody was going to bow to him. But while he was sitting and rotting in that prison with he had to have been alone, and it had to have fought it had to be a big fight in his brain. How is God going to do that? Maybe I missed God. Maybe that dream wasn't even from God. Is God mocking me? So we see these heroes of faith still trusting God, but they weren't exempt from trials. Those trials solidified their faith. And Joseph did have his day where he saw the truth of God and the promise of God revealed and in his life, right? Abraham did have the day when he held baby Isaac in his hands. It took a long way around, but he did see the promise of God fulfilled, right? And so those years that went by, his faith was probably sharpened. It was purified. Like that's what the fiery trials of life does. It purifies our faith. And then, but like I said, it's not for God's benefit. It's for my benefit. Now I've told people the story before. When God told me just move to Chicago, I had about $12 in my checking account, and I was like, how is this even going to happen? But the second I said, okay, you know what, I feel led to go to Chicago, I'm going to start getting my ducks in a row. I've got to take care of my jobs that I had there in Louisiana. I got to do take care of getting rid of all my stuff because I don't want to take it with me, making some transitional moves and things like that to get ready. The second I moved toward what God said, the money began to come in. And it blew me away because I stepped out on faith, and I didn't even know it was faith. I was just like, man, and I even called my friend. I said, this is the craziest thing. It's kind of crazy, but I think God's leading me this way. I talked to my pastor, Apostle Tisdale, and Dad T. I said, I think I'm ready to move on. He's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, I think I need to go to Chicago. And he shook his head. He dropped his head for a second, and he said, well, that sounds crazy, but it sounds right. And so everything started lining up when I stepped out on faith, but it didn't happen overnight. I didn't wake up the next morning in Chicago. Each step was trying my faith. Am I going to trust God for this journey? And it's still the same because that all got taken away when Chris had his wreck. And I thought all the promises that God had made me were gone because the fire of that trial got so hot. God didn't mean anything he said. And I even had times, I hate to admit it, but I even had times where I went, is this word even true? Because there wasn't anything I could find that said, okay, when this happens, hold on, right? Because I didn't see what happened to me played out in the stories, but I did see the faith played out in those characters in the Bible who trusted God in the middle of very difficult circumstances. Like David, he was promised to be king, but he spent many years running from Saul, right? And yet he knew God had promised him he was going to be king. And so I see all these stories play out where they trusted God even when things got hot, even when their ducks weren't in a row, even when they didn't think the promise of God was surely the promise of God maybe he didn't mean it. Maybe it's not what I thought it was. Maybe I missed it. Maybe, we don't always see maybe their thoughts, and we read a story in a matter of a few minutes, and it was actually a lifetime they lived, a lifetime of hardship, like a Job story. We read this whole book of Job in maybe half an hour, maybe an hour if you slow read or fast read or whatever, make it long, 2 hours, maybe read it over the course of a month. Take a chapter a day. Though it'll take a little bit more than a chapter a day. Read it in 35, 34 days, right? That's not anything compared to the months and years that he spent grieving over his children, that he spent with his body not functioning right and being sick. His friends sat there for a week and said nothing because of the grief that was so hard. And we read those things, but we don't have that time element. And so when we start walking through something and we can't get all those ducks in our row like we want them, we get frustrated because we read it in 20 minutes. Why didn't it happen in 20 minutes? And sometimes that 20 minutes we read took 20 years to manifest or to bring that promise of God, right? And here we are. So I still say that analogy of trying to get all your ducks together, gathering up your chicks, herd cats. You ever tried to herd cats? You can't even get one cat to go where you want it to go, right? And so when we're faced with those circumstances, it tries that faith. And I'm going to say this again, it's not for God's benefit. because he knows exactly how much we trust him. We know if he knows if our trustometer is at 96%, we're almost there, but just ain't quite got it. Or he knows if our trustometer is at 3%, we ain't even got started and we don't even know how to fix it, right? He knows if we're anywhere in between. He knows. So he wants us to know. Why? Because we can teach ourselves to trust him more. When bad things happen, we run to him. What's the first thing you do? Do you run to the bottle or do you run to God? When something happens, do you run to your friends? And that's not a bad thing at all, right? To your friends, you need a support system when you go through things. Hopefully you have a good support system of friends and family that will help you through things. But do you count on that more than you count on God? See, God already knows that, but you need to know that. Why? Because you can shift that trustometer over further towards God. You can get all those ducks in a row, get your faith all lined up, and say, try me, God. Go ahead and try my faith. Let's get this thing right. I want to get it right. I want to know that when something bad happens or something good happens, I know God's got me. And I want to have that faith. And so it's a precious thing when our faith is tried, even though it doesn't feel all that precious. It feels hard. But he says, count it joy because he's presenting us to him perfect and whole. We're righteous in Christ already, and he's perfecting those things that concern us. He's perfecting us. He's maturing us. He's getting out those impurities. And so it's a good thing because the more impurities we can get out of our lives, the easier it is to trust him. The easier it is to turn to him first. The more scriptures we learn, the more we learn about God, the easier it is to trust him. And it all comes down to relationship. And let me give a real life analogy now. It wasn't ducks, it was students. And I was a brand new for my first classroom. I'd never been in my own classroom. I was actually subbing the year out for a second grade teacher, which is why I went to junior high. After that, I was like, I don't do second grade. I'm going to junior high. But I was new, and I was trying to get my students all lined up on the wall because we were going to art or something, wherever I was taking them. And I was going, okay, move over to the, no, line up. No, just line, no, just line, no, get back in the line. No, he does just line up. No, just, all right, just get back over. Can you just, do you hear me? Can you just get, and I was really getting frustrated because I didn't know how to even make the students line up. And a lady walks up, Miss Moffat, I still remember her name, Margaret Moffat. She was a wonderful teacher, experienced. I learned so much from her. She stands in front of them, she holds up three fingers, and she goes, now I got quiet. And I went, thanks a lot. I just watched her and marveled at her. And then then she goes down to two fingers, second grade, remember? And she just does this with her hand. And they all just line up. And I'm just like, I've been trying to herd these cats for 10 minutes. And then she goes, stay here until you get to art. And they did. And it wasn't an override. It was the most awesome experience in my teaching career because I was just like, how does she do that? So I thought, I'm going to learn from her. And so I just talked to her. But what it came down to is a relationship. They knew her. They didn't know me. Right? And that was probably a good thing. But they knew her, that she had built that relationship with them. They knew she was the other teacher, that they had dealt with her. And that's what it comes down to when God says, shh. When we have that relationship, we just get quiet because he said be quiet. If he waves his hand and says line up on the wall, we just line up for a second because we know he's taking us someplace important. He's taking us somewhere special. He's taking us somewhere. He's got us. It all comes down to that relationship, and that relationship with God works those impurities out of our heart, works those crazy things out of our head sometimes, most of the time, right? And so it's about that relationship. So if you're in the fire today, it's actually a good thing. God's going to reveal himself to you more. He wants to be able to show you more of who he is, how he can help you, how he can hold you, how he can protect you. And he's got to get those crazy things that fight your faith out. And that the fire is the best place to do it, right? Although it's not a real fun place to be. So I hope you get all your ducks in a row today, and I hope you're not losing any. I hope there's 8 ducks, because that's new beginnings, right? Have a great day, you guys. Hope I said something that made sense and helped encourage you a little bit. Peace out. I'll see you tomorrow.